In a prosperous kingdom surrounded by towering mountains and lush green valleys, there lived a highly skilled blacksmith named Thomas. He was known far and wide for his unmatched craftsmanship. From finely forged swords to intricately designed armor, his work was sought after by knights, nobles, and even the king himself. Despite his humble demeanor, Thomas was considered one of the wisest men in the land, always offering sound advice to those who sought his guidance. Thomas had a son named William, a quiet and observant boy of 15. Unlike his father, who was respected and admired, William was often the subject of ridicule. People in the town whispered about his apparent foolishness, laughing at his peculiar choices. No one understood why the son of a wise and talented man could be so simple-minded. Every morning, William walked to the bustling town square, where merchants displayed their finest goods, and performers entertained the crowds. In the heart of the square stood a wealthy merchant named Lord Edwin. He was a man of great influence, known for his sharp business acumen and a taste for amusement. One day, Lord Edwin devised a game that quickly became a daily attraction for the townspeople. Each morning, as the sun bathed the marketplace in golden light, Lord Edwin would summon William before a crowd of onlookers. With a bemused smile, he would hold out two objects, a gleaming gold coin and a simple silver coin. Then, in a theatrical voice, he would ask, "William, my boy, which of these is more valuable?" The crowd always fell silent, eager to witness the spectacle. Without hesitation, William would reach out and take the silver coin. The moment his fingers closed around it, laughter erupted through the marketplace. People clapped and cheered, shaking their heads at what they perceived as his ignorance. "Poor boy," they would murmur. "He doesn't even know that gold is worth more than silver." Some pitied him, others found his behavior entertaining. Lord Edwin himself chuckled every time. "Perhaps tomorrow he will learn," he would say with a smirk before turning away. Yet, despite the daily humiliation, William never seemed bothered. He simply pocketed the silver coin and walked away, his face calm and unreadable. This puzzled many, but no one cared to question him further. To them, it was a harmless jest, a source of amusement that cost nothing but a moment's ridicule. Word of this strange routine eventually reached the royal palace. The kingdom's ruler, King Henry, was a fair and just monarch who valued intelligence above all else. He prided himself on surrounding himself with the brightest minds, and one of his most trusted advisors was none other than Thomas, the blacksmith. One afternoon, as Thomas stood in the grand hall of the palace, presenting a newly crafted ceremonial sword to the king, the conversation took an unexpected turn. "Thomas," the king began, admiring the craftsmanship of the weapon, "your skills are unparalleled, and your wisdom has guided this kingdom well." He then paused, setting the sword aside, his expression turning curious. "But there is something that troubles me." Thomas straightened, sensing the seriousness in the king's tone. "Your Majesty, I am honored by your words. May I ask what concerns you?" The king leaned forward, his fingers drumming lightly against the armrest of his ornate throne. "It is about your son, William." At the mention of his son's name, Thomas felt a twinge of unease. "What about him, your Majesty?" King Henry let out a slow breath. "I have heard rumors, strange stories from the marketplace. They say he chooses a silver coin over a gold coin every day, despite knowing that gold is far more valuable. The entire town laughs at him. Even Lord Edwin, a man of great wealth, has made a game out of his ignorance. Tell me, Thomas, is it true?" Thomas hesitated. He had not been aware of these stories. He had always known his son to be quiet and thoughtful, but foolish? That did not seem right. I do not know, your Majesty. I will find out the truth." The king nodded. "See to it that you do. A man of your wisdom should not have a son who is mocked by the kingdom." The word stung, but Thomas remained composed. He bowed respectfully and took his leave, his mind now clouded with concern. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast a warm orange glow over their modest home, Thomas sat by the fireplace, waiting for William to return. When the boy finally stepped inside, his father called him over. "William, sit with me." The boy obeyed, lowering himself onto the wooden bench opposite his father. His face remained unreadable, as it always was. Thomas studied him for a moment before speaking.
I have heard stories, my son. Stories of what happens every morning in the marketplace. William didn't flinch.
He merely nodded, as if he had been expecting this conversation.
Is it true? Thomas pressed. Do you truly take the silver coin instead of the gold coin every day?
Yes, father, William replied simply.
Thomas exhaled through his nose, rubbing his temple. But why, my son? You are not a fool.
You must know that gold is worth far more than silver. William met his father's gaze, his expression calm and unwavering. But instead of answering immediately, he stood up and gestured for his father to follow him. Curious, Thomas rose to his feet and followed his son into his small bedroom. William knelt beside a wooden chest at the foot of his bed and lifted the lid. Inside, under the dim glow of candlelight, lay a neat pile of silver coins. Thomas's eyes widened slightly. There were far more coins than he had expected. These, William said, motioning toward the pile, are the silver coins I have collected. His father stared at them for a long moment, realization slowly dawning on him.
But why, William? Why continue this charade?
The boy looked up at his father, his lips curling into the faintest of smiles. But instead of answering, he remained silent, as if waiting for his father to truly see. The answer was there, hidden in the simple collection of coins.
Yet, at that moment, Thomas did not yet understand.
Thomas stared at the pile of silver coins, his mind racing.
The small wooden chest before him was nearly full, each coin glinting in the dim candlelight.
His son, William, had remained silent, waiting for his father to piece together the puzzle. Finally, Thomas spoke, his voice low and measured. William, I see the silver coins, but I do not yet understand. You know that gold is worth more than silver. You have been given the choice every day, and yet you continue to choose the lesser coin. Why? William met his father's gaze with calm confidence.
Father, if I had chosen the gold coin the first time, Lord Edwin would have stopped offering me a choice. The game would be over.
Thomas's brow furrowed as he considered his son's words. William continued, his voice steady and sure.
Every morning, Lord Edwin asks me the same question, and every morning I take the silver coin.
The crowd laughs, and Lord Edwin walks away, pleased with his little joke.
But the next day, he does it again. And the next. And the next. If I had chosen the gold coin, I would have received just one. But by choosing silver, I have earned dozens, perhaps even hundreds. Thomas glanced at the chest once more.
Indeed, there were far more silver coins than a single gold piece could ever be worth. His son had not been foolish at all, he had been playing a much longer game, one that no one else had recognized.
But, William, Thomas said, his voice laced with curiosity, do you not mind being laughed at? Do you not mind that people think you are foolish?
William smiled slightly. Father, what people think does not change what is true. They laugh because they do not see the full picture. They see a boy who cannot tell gold from silver. I see a steady stream of wealth that continues to grow each day. Their laughter does not take a single coin from my hands. Thomas felt a surge of pride rise within him. His son had shown wisdom beyond his years, wisdom even beyond what many of the so-called wise men of the kingdom possessed. But before he could say anything more, a sharp knock sounded at the door. Thomas and William exchanged glances before Thomas moved to open it. Standing in the fading light of dusk was none other than Lord Edwin himself. His richly embroidered cloak draped over his shoulders, and a knowing smile played on his lips.
Master Thomas, Lord Edwin greeted, nodding politely. May I have a word? Thomas stepped aside, allowing the merchant to enter. William remained seated, his expression composed. Lord Edwin wasted no time.
He turned his sharp eyes toward the boy and chuckled.
Well, young William.
You've certainly caused quite the stir in town. People cannot decide whether you are the wisest child they have ever seen or the most foolish. William did not respond, only watching as Lord Edwin paced slowly around the room. The merchant continued, I must admit, I have been amused by our little game.
But now, I find myself wondering, do you truly not know the value of gold? Or have you been playing a game of your own?
For the first time, William spoke directly. His voice was polite but unwavering.
"What do you think, Lord Edwin?" The merchant let out a laugh, shaking his head. "I think you are far smarter than you let on. And that is precisely why I am here." Thomas crossed his arms, listening intently. "What is it you want, Lord Edwin?" The merchant turned to face the blacksmith. "I want to end the game."
A flicker of something unreadable passed through William's eyes, but he remained silent. Lord Edwin continued, "For weeks, perhaps months, I have offered your son a choice. And for weeks, he has chosen the silver coin, much to the delight of the crowd. But today, I realized something. The crowd is no longer laughing at William, they are laughing at me." Thomas raised an eyebrow, and William tilted his head slightly, as if urging him to go on. Lord Edwin exhaled, as if admitting a difficult truth. "The people have begun to suspect. At first, they believed William was simply foolish. But now, they are whispering. They are wondering if he has outwitted me. If I continue the game, I will look like the fool who was tricked by a mere boy." A moment of silence filled the room. Then William, with the same calm expression, asked, "So what will you do?" The merchant smiled, but this time it was one of respect rather than amusement. "Tomorrow, I will no longer offer you a choice between gold and silver. Instead, I will offer you something far greater." Thomas and William exchanged glances before Thomas asked, "And what might that be?" Lord Edwin's eyes gleamed. "A place in my household." "William, I see that you are not just clever, you are patient, calculating, and wise beyond your years. A boy like you should not be collecting mere coins in the marketplace. You should be learning the art of business, of trade, of wealth that extends far beyond what a single gold piece can buy." Thomas's heart pounded as he considered the merchant's words. This was no ordinary offer. Lord Edwin was one of the wealthiest men in the kingdom, with influence that reached beyond the borders. For William to study under him would mean a future filled with opportunity. But the decision was not his to make. He turned to his son. "William, what do you say?" The boy looked at the silver coins once more, then met the merchant's gaze. His expression was thoughtful, but there was no hesitation in his voice. "I accept," he said simply. Lord Edwin grinned, clearly pleased. "Then it is settled. Tomorrow, instead of a silver coin, you will come to my estate. We have much to discuss." With that, the merchant took his leave, stepping into the night. Thomas closed the door behind him, turning back to his son with a mixture of pride and wonder. "You knew this would happen, didn't you?" Thomas asked. William smiled faintly. "I hoped it would." His father chuckled, shaking his head. "You are far wiser than I ever gave you credit for, my son." William simply nodded. He had played the game well, and now, he had won. The next morning, the marketplace was abuzz with anticipation. For weeks, the townspeople had gathered to witness William's peculiar choice between gold and silver, but today, something felt different. Whispers spread through the crowd, rumors that Lord Edwin had made a special visit to William's home the night before. No one knew what had transpired, but they all sensed that the game was about to change. As the sun climbed higher, Lord Edwin arrived at the marketplace, dressed in his finest attire. Instead of carrying the usual gold and silver coins, he brought with him a sealed letter bearing his official crest. The moment William approached, a hush fell over the crowd. The merchant smiled, but this time, there was no mockery in his expression. He held up the letter for all to see before turning to address William. "My boy," he said, his voice carrying through the square, "our game has come to an end. Today, I will not ask you to choose between gold and silver. Instead, I offer you this." With great ceremony, he extended the letter toward William. The boy took it, his face unreadable as he broke the seal and read its contents. When he finished, he lifted his gaze to Lord Edwin, his expression calm but determined. "What does it say?" someone in the crowd called out. Lord Edwin turned to face the onlookers. "It is an apprenticeship contract," he announced. "From this day forward, William will study under me, learning the ways of trade, commerce, and business. No longer will he be known as the boy who chose silver over gold, he will become a man who understands the value of wealth beyond mere coins. A murmur spread through the crowd. Some were astonished. Others nodded in understanding. And then, slowly, the realization settled upon them: William had never been a fool. One by one, the townspeople began to applaud. It was not the laughter of mockery they had so often shared at his expense, but genuine admiration. They had misjudged him, failing to see what had been right in front of them all along. As the applause grew, William turned to his father, who stood at the edge of the crowd, watching with quiet pride. Thomas nodded, a silent acknowledgement of his son's wisdom. Lord Edwin placed a hand on William's shoulder. "Come, we have much work ahead of us." With that, the two departed from the marketplace together, leaving behind the old game and stepping into a new future. Years later. Time passed, and William grew into a man of great success. Under Lord Edwin's mentorship, he learned not only the intricacies of business but also the power of patience, strategy, and perception. He became known throughout the kingdom as a brilliant trader, a man who could turn a simple deal into a fortune. His wealth grew, but unlike many others who flaunted their riches, William remained humble. He did not seek to prove himself to those who had once laughed at him. He had no need to. Instead, he continued to make wise choices, building a reputation as both a shrewd businessman and a generous benefactor. One day, as he walked through the same marketplace where he had once been mocked, he overheard a familiar scene unfolding. A wealthy merchant was testing a young boy, much like Lord Edwin had tested him years ago. 2 coins lay in the boy's hands, 1 gold, 1 silver. The merchant smirked, waiting for the boy to make his choice. William watched as the boy hesitated, his small fingers brushing over the gold before settling on the silver. The crowd laughed, just as they had laughed at him long ago. The merchant chuckled, shaking his head. "You have much to learn, boy." Before the boy could walk away, William stepped forward. The crowd fell silent, recognizing him instantly. "Tell me, young one," William said gently, "why did you choose the silver coin?" The boy glanced up at him, wide-eyed. After a moment, he swallowed and replied, "Because if I take the gold today, he will never offer it again. But if I take the silver, he will keep testing me, and I will keep collecting coins." A slow smile spread across William's face. He knelt to the boy's level and patted his shoulder. "A wise choice," he said. Then, reaching into his own pocket, he pulled out a gleaming gold coin and placed it in the boy's hand. "But remember," he continued, "there comes a time when the game must end, and a greater opportunity must begin. Choose wisely when that moment arrives." The boy stared at the gold coin in amazement, then up at William with newfound respect. The crowd, having witnessed the exchange, no longer laughed. Instead, they nodded in understanding. They had seen the lesson come full circle. As William walked away, he knew that the world would always have those who judged too quickly, those who laughed before they understood. But true wisdom was in seeing beyond the surface, in knowing when to play the game and when to rise above it. And so, he smiled to himself, knowing that some lessons, once learned, would never be forgotten.